And yeah, welcome. So today is going to be a really exciting day. There's been a lot of momentum recently, obviously, in the AI space, especially around Microsoft. And I'll tell you, it's kind of like a kid in a candy store. First, we get GPT-5, then we hear about these new model changes that are going on and all these new features that are being introduced, and then all the challenges that come with that. So today, we're really excited to dig a little bit deeper into some of these and talk a little bit more about it. So it sounds like it's hard to hear me. Sorry, Leah. I appreciate that. Let me see if I can figure out where my boost is, and maybe that helps a little bit there. And I'll bring that up a little bit more. That being said, it looks like my mic is in the clear here. So let me know, Leah, what you see. Anyways, let's keep going here. First and foremost, hello, welcome everyone to another Stoneridge Confab. Today we're going to be going through some of the AI updates. So it's going to be a lot of fun to cover that in some more detail here. I have guest speaker, as you can tell, as well, that I'll have do an introduction in just a second. But really what we're going to focus on, obviously, is going to be some of the news that Microsoft has regarding some of the new transformer models and what's going on there in terms of their investment with OpenAI, for example, because I bet you a lot of you are kind of curious. We're going to talk a bit about prompting and about notebooks and those capabilities. And then finally, we're going to go through and then show some of this as well. And to be able to do that, I can't do everything by myself, so I have wonderful Tracy on. Tracy, do you want to go ahead and give an introduction to yourself so that everyone knows who you are and what you're going to be covering today?
Yeah, hey Scott, I'm so glad to be back on Confab. So Tracy Ottenstroer, and I've been with Stoneridge about 4.5 years. I work with clients all day long on just making sure they have everything they need to be successful with their business apps and M365. So right now, I would say I am neck deep in flight schools for Copilot. We have lots of client groups going through flight schools, learning about the basics of M365 Copilot. This week, I worked with some executives on training Copilot in the apps, like Outlook and Excel, some of the apps that they were really interested in. We did some deep dives on those. That was really fun. And I have to say, I had a really exciting moment last week with Copilot, if we have time for it. I was writing an RFP. I can't imagine that you haven't written a few of these in your day. And it literally took me about a half a day to write it. And it was a 21-page response that I am pumped about. And it was obviously I was using Copilot to assist me. And I would say 30 minutes of it was working with Copilot back and forth. And then like the 3 hours was reading the 21 pages to make sure that I liked the response. So yeah, I feel like I'm having a lot of success these days with Copilot, and it's fun to share what we learn.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's maybe it's the mic, right, Leah? So hopefully it looks like I'm clipping when I get it too close into the red. So hopefully this will be a little bit better. But yeah, Tracy, you nailed it. Like it's been a lot of fun to work with a lot of the executive teams out there as well in terms of the capabilities around Copilot. And just starting to understand what they can do with it, because it's one of those things where it's a newer technology and there's been a lot of hype around it and a lot of perspective that I would say isn't entirely accurate. And so being able to help them identify where that goes obviously is really great, and what we can do with it. So, and Tracy, you've been helping obviously with the M365 side of this quite a bit as well, right? Like that's been a big portion of your work here at Stone Ridge, is really putting together a lot of that program as well, right? That we tackle day in and day out now.
Yeah, I think there's such a benefit in us having that foundational help for our clients of, change management, and not just giving people this tool that is Copilot, but really teaching them how to use it, spending time with their champions and people that are going to be leading their efforts and giving them those tools to be successful using AI. Part of that is just basic prompting 101, like how do you prompt and get good results? So that's definitely, I love when you brought up bringing this topic to Confab. I think it's a great topic. Copilot notebooks are something that our executives and some of our other teams are using, and we're excited to show those off and really show you the capabilities of what you can do with them. Yeah, and I know you're going to talk about some of these OpenAI model changes, which I think is absolutely fascinating, where we see the progression of where we've come.
Well, let's put this out a little bit, right? Because I think for the audience, feel free to hammer us with questions in the background here as you have them. Remember, Confab is interactive, so if you've got a question or if you've got a comment or if you've got an opinion, feel free to share it. We love to hear more about it. We stream obviously on LinkedIn, Twitch, and also on YouTube. So we're multi-streaming. We've got a chat that we can monitor as well. So once again, if anything, say hello even on LinkedIn. If you put it in the comments, we know you're there, and we're not just talking to dead space here, obviously. And by the way, free consulting is always a good thing. So especially if you trust your consultant. So that being said, let's dig in right away here because there's been some major changes with really the GPT models that came out, right, Tracy? Where we had GPT-5 that recently came out, and when that happened, Microsoft got it basically right away. And there's been there's been some angst. It's a new model change, and people are, number one, they're like, well, wait a second. Um, this doesn't do exactly what it did before, for example. And then there's another aspect that came out of it from an industry perspective that was pretty wild. The new model broke things. Like it broke different types of agents or chat experiences that people had beyond just the emotional, like it's no longer talking to me like a therapist, feedback that was pretty common. It was like it's not giving me the right results that are related to it. And I wanted to talk about that just at a high level to start because, quite candidly, I don't see this changing, Tracy. Like I see this happening more and more, right? So, one of the things that I just want to kind of mention here is that remember when we talk about these components, when we talk about Copilot, Copilot is a bunch of different technologies that are linked together that work in tandem to provide really that operational capability or automation capability inside of your business. And what do I mean by that? Well, we use, for example, an orchestrator that queues up replies. We have security and grounding that happens in it that I've shown a million times on Confab here and on so many different slides. We've got a large language model on the back end that takes that data and then provides the generative output from it as well. And if you think about it, what does that mean? Well, that means when you develop something, you got to test it. And if you were doing this with a web service that was exposed back in the day, because a web service was this great new technology where you could do a SOAP or an OData query to go to that web service, well, what did they do is they'd have different revisions of the web service that would increment when there were new capabilities that were added to it. So you would have a version basically of that web service. Well, the same concept really does exist as well with large language models. If you are using a large language model to generate output, it is a component in your framework that needs to be tested. And I love to do just like the simple stuff to start here, to be quite honest. And maybe what I'll do here is I'll just go ahead and flip my screen over and we'll just make a really quick diagram here. And we'll use our wonderful tool called Paint to do it because Paint comes with Windows. We'll use that amazing tool. So let me go ahead and just like make this a little bit bigger here, right? And we'll oversimplify this. We have our application. We have, for example, the output of that application, and then we have this little thing down here, right? And we have all these different things that we can do for shapes, right? We can connect it. We can say, for example, that our application goes through and sends a response here, and then or sends a request here, and then basically gets a response here. And what do we do in development? Well, we name these in architecture, right? So we'll sit there and say this is the MVVM application or web application or whatever we want to do with it, right? Yeah, you gotta love it, Joe, right? Whiteboarding, you gotta use Paint for whiteboarding. Then what we do down here is we go ahead and we create the large language model, right? So this is the LLM. This is GPT 4, 4, 1, 5, 6 when it comes out, whatever it may be, right? And then this is typically the response, right, that you then process in some way, shape, or form. And I'm oversimplifying really on purpose here because if you look at it as just block diagrams, it makes so much more sense why, for example, this particular area needs to be validated and tested because it impacts obviously your output as you go through your processing. And just to kind of talk through this, like, so that sounds self-explanatory, right, type of a thing. But a lot of people, when they built their prompts, for example, with their applications, they didn't make them resilient. They didn't follow a prompting guideline to be more specific or to activate really the right cognitive generative output that's needed from the large language model. They got something that worked and they left it, and then when they changed the model on the back end to a new model, it broke the application. And so this gets into this concept once again that while AI allows us to go faster, it does not absolve us from the responsibility of doing good software development lifecycle management. You still need to incorporate that in this because the large language model on the bottom here is a tool, right? Once again, it's like web services, it's like anything else that we use architecturally for it. Now, one of the things I just want to share then, though, is just the progression that we have seen with these large language models. And just to strike home, hopefully, for a lot of you, in terms of, well, why do I have to do this? Well, this is why you have to do this. Go to progress.openai.com, and I showed Tracy this before we started the stream. This shows a comparison of a prompt that was generated from, for example, GPT-1, GPT-2, 4, 5, and this came out when 5 came out, which I thought was really, really, really cool. Because I was really curious on like, well, what are the changes that we see inside of these prompts? And so this shows you just unequivocally and objectively when an AR model or a large language model gets a prompt on what it does as that output. And you can see from, for example, GPT-1 to GPT-5 here, when you say, for example, what would you say if you could talk to a future OpenAI model? There's a huge difference in capability here, right? Formatting, italicizing, bulleting versus non-bulleting. I mean, you look at the first transformer architecture, it really didn't do very good at, for example, putting spaces in words and joining them together as part of it, right? And what's really cool about this site is that it shows you all of the other types of responses and queries like consciousness, Newton's laws of physics that are related to it. When we had it write code, for example, inside of here, in certain models, it wasn't able to do it, but here, as you can see, it was able to do it. And the reason I share this is because if you think about, for example, the future here when it comes to your prompts, it's really going to matter in how you structure your prompt. Because if you use it this generic, you can see you get all these different wide variety of responses. But when it comes to application development, unless you want a prompt to interpret a prompt to interpret a prompt, which you could theoretically do to, take the funnel and basically reduce it to a subset of operations that you want it to have as an output, that gets expensive, right? It gets really, really expensive because each prompt you get charged for, or it's either in tokens or messages or whatever the billing rate model is that's related to it. And the other thing that happens is that it destroys confidence in the user base. And I can't stress this enough. The number one challenge that we have with AI adoption across business systems right now is the fact that most partners do not know how to develop a very effective prompt. And when that prompt is then used in a business where it creates hallucinations or doesn't result in accurate data retrieval, end users no longer want to use it because they can't trust the system for that output. So just a heads up, like how you do this matters and it impacts obviously that adoption. And once again, this doesn't mean that AI is perfect or imperfect either. It really comes to that scaffolding concept that we've been talking about so often on Confab and so often with all of our customers that does help them improve those capabilities. Now, I guess, Tracy, kind of with that, maybe what we can do is dive into the prompting because you've got some really good content that you created here that goes through a framework that you focused on from an end user perspective, obviously, but the same concept from an end user would work in development as well. So maybe we start there to kind of talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I like that, Scott, and I can take it. So I would say when you think about prompting, whether you're prompting in the Copilot chat app or in Excel or Outlook or, in creating an agent, right, in Copilot Studio, you're using prompting, right? So prompting is the foundation for the success of you using AI. So that's why we're going to spend time on it. And here at Stoneridge, we have this framework. We call it, well, I'm not going to tell you what we call it yet, but I want to give you some analogies first. So think about this. So you're going to jump in the ocean. Okay. That's not my favorite thing to do. But before you jump in the ocean, you're going to have gear on. You're going to set your depth on your stuff. You're going to plan your route. You're going to prepare for it, right? You're going to play a hockey game. Let's see, what do you put on? I have a hockey player in the family. Your breezers, your elbow pads, your skates, your helmet, right? It's all your gear. You wouldn't move your car or your motorcycle without putting it in the right gear. I think you're going to see a trend here. You're not going to go to work without your laptop, probably your favorite keyboard, maybe your dual monitors, your ergonomic chair. That's your gear for your office. And prompting works the same way. Like your ocean gear, your hockey helmet, your laptop, you go to work with your Copilot and your prompts. So prompts are the thing that protects you from misinformation. It drives your plays. It helps you move fast and move smoothly. And our framework then is all around the word gear, because that's what we're talking about here. So what is prompting? It's asking Copilot to do something, and the way you ask it does matter. And the framework is called gear. And I want you to remember that. So whether you're the hockey player that's going to remember that, or the ocean jumper, think about how you want to remember this. And each of gear has its own thing. So when I'm typing a prompt, I'm thinking of these things along the way. So goal is G in gear. What do you want your Copilot to do? So at the beginning of your prompt, you don't have to do it in this order, but think about it this way. So at the beginning of your prompt, what do you want Copilot to do? You have to define the end result. So something like create a training outline for onboarding a new sales rep. That is the goal of what you want to do. Okay. Then you have to set the environment or the context of what it is. Oftentimes I'll say, I'm an account manager at Stoneridge, a Microsoft partner, and blah, blah, blah. You might say, this is a fast-paced SaaS company expanding into Latin America. Whatever it may be that you're doing, give it the idea of why it is that you're asking the question. Okay, then the next part of your prompt is the action. So you're going to want to tell the Copilot, describe the specific task or action that you want Copilot to perform. So like list or give a table of, or whatever it may be, 3 models or learning objectives, okay? Or 3 modules with learning objectives, just something like where you're being clear about what it is that you want. And then the rules. So include your guidelines, your constraints, your preferences, make it factual. Like that's probably one of the most important things that I like to put in there, right? So make it factual, or only reference data from the Microsoft website, or only from the Stoneridge website, or whatever you'd like to say, but give it a rule. Okay. So instead of saying, summarize this, make it better, create a presentation, what's going on, help me with this email, we're now going to rewrite things in a much more comprehensive way. Okay. So breaking it down one more time, draft an email to my manager. That's the goal. Set the scene or context to help understand the background. So maybe it's, draft an email to my manager that is, let's see, I need to ask if I can attend the conference, the Stoneridge, the conference in Orlando coming up, the summit. Describe the specific task or action I want to perform. I want to be, let's see, I want to be specific. I want to be quick to give a persuasive response on why I should be attending, using the information from an email that I reference in the end. And then make sure that it's persuasive and factual. Okay, that wasn't a great example. Here is a great example. So here's the prompt. It's a very long one, so we're going to break it down. So the goal of this, design a simple, effective internal knowledge sharing system. Okay. The environment or context for a Microsoft Dynamics consulting firm. Functional, and then here I'm going to give it more context. Consultants often solve unique challenges, but insights are rarely shared across teams. So then the action, using tools like SharePoint Teams and D365, propose a framework to capture and organize project learnings. Okay, so I'm giving it that action of like what I want it to do. And then the rule is make it easy. Search by industry and module and sustainability without heavy governance. So you can see how just taking the time to go through the framework is going to give you a much longer prompt, yeah, but it's going to be much more specific and it will give you much better results. When you do this in the context of agent writing, it makes a huge amount of difference as well.
Yeah,
So
I just want to add to that, Tracy, right? Because it's really important because, like, when I go through a response in an email, what I'll do is I'll still just use copy paste with a lot of the actions I do because I want to take information from maybe different documents or data sources with it. And so what I'll do is I'll say something like, I'd like to craft an email. That's the goal, right? So that's what I'll do with it. What I'll then do is I'll say, for example, if it's a response to, we'll say like a functional consultant, I can say, this is in regards to the functionality inside of Dynamics 365 inside of the AP processing module. Then what I'll do is I'll go through and say, I've got data here that I'm going to attach inside of this prompt at the bottom that defines the functionality and capability, and I'd like you to take that and basically summarize it in a narrative that I'm going to be providing then to that functional consultant. And then for the rules, I'll sit there and say, make sure to reflect my same tone that I typically have in my emails, make it fun, keep it lighthearted, ask for feedback, that type of stuff inside of those rules, and then generate it. And I will say that, kind of to your point, like I think too many of us get stuck on the prompt being short, but the longer the prompt is to a degree, the better results you get with it, and um, the less it is not your thoughts. And that's the one thing that I find very interesting about this because having like it was kind of funny, one of the team members that we're working with right now for another proof of concept, he was joking around, he was saying it's one of our customers, he was saying, yeah, there's a lot of people that are taking the AI to generate a narrative, and then when they get the email that has the narrative, they use AI to summarize the narrative. So it's kind of one of those things where it can be a double-edged sword with it, but I pretty much guarantee that if you in your prompt use the actions, for example, in the environment framing to say be very concise, or you bring those main bullet points that are inside of there, it'll typically reconsume those bullet points and then add detail around them that sounds and flows better, that does read better and easier for people, as opposed to being concise, because concise can be curt, it can be viewed as very rigid, and that's typically not the type of communication you want to do. So just note that, what you can also do is in the rules, you could say, take out points that you don't feel are relevant, and that can be kind of detrimental, because then you are allowing it to change the concepts that you're trying to communicate. But once again, it's a possibility, right? So I love how you've broken it out into this gear model, to be quite candid.
yeah, thanks, Scott. And you mentioned something too, which is interesting. So, make it sound more like me. And I think with these recent large language models, we've been able to see that it's getting to know us a little bit. And there's also some settings that you can do to personalize it. Those are rolling out on environments and tenants right now. So to get to know who you are and how you want to be, how you want to be seen. So that is like, make it sound like me is going to be something that we're using more and more. So I like that.
Yep. Tone, right?
Yeah. All right. Very good. I have another example. So here, I'm just going to play it out. So the goal of this is, okay, I need to improve the user experience in D365 by customizing interfaces for different user roles and reducing manual tasks. So this is very much a consultant example, but as a user of D365, potentially these are things you could come across as well. So in this case, we're talking about a functional consultant supporting various roles across sales, finance, and service. Clients are finding it sometimes clunky to interface with repetitive tasks. So we're focusing on real world pain points and suggesting we want practical enhancements using Power Apps or Power Automate, such as a simplified form or a role-based dashboard or an automated workflow. So we're asking it to give us these real practical enhancement ideas and keeping the solutions low code, scalable, and aligned with Microsoft's tools. So this is a great example of a prompt. Now, one thing that Scott's idea triggered as well is I will often, because Copilot in my work tab knows me now and knows the framework that Stoneridge has for the goal, GEA&R, or GEAR. And so I can go into Copilot now and say, write me a prompt about this, and it will come up and chunk out the framework, a good prompt for me using this framework. So I use Copilot sometimes to create my prompts.
Oh,
So
I use it
have
all
your
the
Copilot,
time, right?
right?
Yeah.
I think it's like the best pro tip ever. So use that, like have Copilot get to know your gear framework, and then it will remember it and also help you provide more. The other thing that I just want to point out is I didn't update the header there, but you can save your prompts, and I think that's a super helpful thing. So I just want to point that out. So I have a couple screenshots here. If you hover over a prompt that you have in like wherever you're prompting, and you hit the little flag there, what's going to happen is you'll be asked if you want to save the prompt. You can create a title for that prompt. You can tweak it however you want and save it. And then when you're in your chat app or whatever, you can go to your prompt library down here right next to where you'd write in your own prompt. So if you find one that you really like that you're going to repeat a lot, and you go to your prompts, it's going to list the prompts that you have, and it will, you'll be able to reference and recall those quickly. So if you take the time to write a good prompt, you can recall it here. You can also schedule prompts to be run every day at a certain time. So, taking the time to write a good prompt is a good idea. And here are some ideas of things that you might want to use Copilot for.
That's really
Prompts.
cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool, Tracy. And I guess, some of the things I just want to talk to the team about, just at a high level, or anyone else that's talking through this. First and foremost, one of the concepts or feedback items that I have gotten from our development team has been, well, Scott, the prompts that we do in Copilot, for example, are not the same that we see when we're dealing with, for example, the AI prompts. And you're absolutely right. It's not, right? And it's really confusing because you're trying to figure out, like, well, what the heck? Why is this not the same? Why are we getting different results, for example, when we're interacting with the chat experience with Copilot compared to I just did a prompt with the same Copilot model and Copilot Studio? Why is that? And really candidly, the reason for it is because when we're interacting with the chat experience, the prompt that you put in is not the only thing that's sent to the large language model. So when you're interacting with Copilot, for example, inside of M365 in the chat experience, what's happening is that it's also, for example, going out and taking the rest of the conversation that you've had, and it's kind of prepending it or even appending it. I don't know exactly where they're putting it as part of it, but they're saying here is the previous history of the end user that's been interacting with you. What it will then also do is it will have even pre-setup type prompts that will occur that are make it easier for a chat experience, but for like a developer, it's a problem because you'll do a prompt, for example, after you've done 5 other prompts, and you'll get it to react the way you want it to, but it's not the way it reacts then in Copilot Studio, for example, right? So what I always recommend is detach the large language model from the web search and also from the chat experience. And how do you do that? build AI prompts. Like use that pattern inside of the Power Platform. So in Power Platform, you can go to prompts and you can create custom prompts. And in those custom prompts, you basically can say what model you want to use, like 4 Omni, 4 1, and 5 on paid preview, for example. Those are one-shot prompts. So, and that's a big difference here where there's not as much scaffolding that's put into play for the pre-prompting that occurs inside of that prompt that's then delivered to the large language model. Just as an example, in AI prompts, you can't have it search the web. It's just accessing the large language model to generate that content. You have to use like Bing Search API to pass those results into an AI prompt in order for it to do that. So this gear concept still applies though, because what you want to do is in your one-shot prompt that you're going to be creating from a development perspective, you are going to want to have the gear, the environment, the action, right? And then the rules that are related to it. You're going to want those incorporated into it to bring that back. And in your rules, more than likely as a development team, you're probably going to ask for it to bring the results back in JSON, right? Like it's going to be something like that as opposed to interacting with raw text that's related to it. So something just to note as you go through this, because I know it's caused some confusion for some team members as well. And what I'm going to do here, just in the background really quickly here, is I wanted to go to our M365 Copilot, because I think there's this concept called notebooks. Is that right, Tracy? What are notebooks?
Yes, they're the most amazing things ever created on this earth. So
Ooh, that's pretty
notebooks,
bigger and
I know
better than
that's kind of
sliced
maybe
bread,
overstating
right?
it. I
Right?
don't know, right? So notebooks are a way that you can place your digital content and kind of group things however you'd like. So like you might have a project notebook. Just think like a OneNote, for example. You've got project notebooks, you've got client notebooks, you've got, specific topics of notebooks, and you put your content in there. Content could be a Word, an Excel document, a Loop component if you guys are using Loop yet. Really almost anything you want. It could be a website. So you have this list of all your resources and your contents, and then you give the notebook instructions on how you want it to behave, and then it becomes a kind of a personal agent for that topic. Okay, yep, and it lives right here like you're showing in the Copilot chat app. You can also access it now in OneNote, so it becomes almost like on your list, on your desktop list of OneNotes. You have your list of AI notebooks now, and it becomes a place where you can talk to your content and ask it questions. You can also do this fancy thing called audio overviews. So I've been coaching some of our clients to like put some information in here. Let's say you're a new project manager on a project, put all of the contents of your project in there, and then go and take a walk or go on your commute and listen in a podcast style format all about reviewing all of the content that you put in there. Like mind-blowingly cool.
So what this is then though, like, so if we think about like the other technologies that are out there, because I think for some audience members a comparison can help. So in OpenAI's architecture, I think they call these projects, right? Like that's one area of this. Gemini has something very similar as well, and I forgot what it was called right offhand. But it's basically a way to group information together so that you can then ask more specific questions in chats around it. But it's not like so there's the other aspect of it where you can create your own agent, right? And you can attach information to it. Notebooks aren't as deep as that, but they kind of act like that in some ways because they reference a bunch of that information, right, to be able to drive how people can then interact with the notebook. Is that kind of a correct statement there, Tracy?
Yeah, I would say so. Like a notebook would be a place that you personally, you can't share the notebook with anybody, but it's a place where, at least right now, it's like a curation of information that you can go to quickly get to certain topic content, okay? And then you can tell it how you want it to act and respond with you. compared to an agent where it can either do autonomous things for you or do things on your behalf, and you can share that out into the world, and it can become an expert, and your agents should become experts on a topic. But they're made for like other people to use along with you, and they're just, I guess, in a way, notebooks are an agent, but this is something that's specific to your organization.
Okay, that makes sense. So you can
Okay.
add, for example, different types of files that are inside of here to drive that, like PDFs, Excel files, you name it. You can reference those inside of here. You can actually, it looks like, create new pages inside of a notebook as well, to be able to build that out even further, right? If I go back to my notebook, there we've got our HR questions. And beyond pages, so pages are information, right, that we can store that's then related to this. I'll delete that as an example inside of here. But I think the powerful thing is that there's the chats, right? So now I can ask questions about like what is our family and leave time policy, right? In the chat experience here. And what a notebook should do is it should reference, for example, that PDF file to find those details. But in a notebook as well, if I have another chat, I should be able to then have, for example, that chat reference that chat information from before. So it shares all of that information then inside of the notebook to be able to drive that. So we just added that, for example, leave time details that are related to it. And you can see now that it's referencing basically that handbook details that were set up as one of those knowledge sources. Basically, it's not technically a knowledge source, it's technically what would they call it if we go back to our HR questions, a reference inside of here. But the
Yeah.
chat, then I could have many different chats that are related to this. So I guess, Tracy, maybe the best way to do it, I use notebooks to ideate on AI enablement, features and function capabilities. You could have a notebook, for example, that you have a list of AP processes, and then you ask it which AP processes would be great candidates potentially for AI automation related to them. And because you've got those documented, it could extract that information, and then you could ideate even further off of it to keep on building that out. So these notebooks are just a really good way to organize that data, right, to get to some of those answers. And like you said, they now added it to OneNote. Is that what I heard? Like you can.
They do. Yeah, if you just scroll up to the top of your list of OneNotes, the agent or the notebooks are on the top of that
Okay,
list.
cool. Well, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
a recent change. Yeah, I would think of notebooks too as like a place where kind of a thinking partner. So more of a strategic partner that you use for your planning, your analysis, and that kind of thing. Also, notebooks they don't have that long-term memory like your agents do, so they're session based. So each time, like you have reference to the chats, but they 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 think individually. So one chat is its own chat, and then another chat is its own chat. Um, it's sort of your collaborator, and it's a place for you to explore ideas and like reason through problems.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's really
um,
cool. I like that.
yeah,
And so
right.
do we know if they actually, like if I have two chats in here, does it reference these two? Can it cross them in notebooks? Have you
I
seen?
don't believe so.
Okay.
So I'm
Okay.
pretty sure that it references the references, but not the chats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
that's good to
Yep.
know because once again, that I know in the OpenAI model, their projects, it does reference the other chats that are related to it. So once again, good to compare and contrast so people know kind of the capabilities and the restrictions that are there. And obviously, I'm sure as they see more features that'll be added, they'll be able to reference more information inside of here as well. So very, very cool capability. I just love the fact as well, once again, that it's built into OneNote so that we can get to it then from OneNote if needed as well. So that's a pretty cool thing.
I really like, and if you're not a Loop user yet, I would look into Loop, but I really like how you can add a Loop component to this as well, because now you're taking team member information, because Loop is a collaboration app. It's a new tool. Think of it like a OneNote on steroids. It's OneNote, but you can live time collaborate with it. Like you're showing, you can create like Kanban boards and project notes. and calendar activities. So think of it like a project space for your team. And we could be like, if you shared that with me right now, we could be collaborating in that in real time. And then if you put your loop component into a notebook, now you can like ask questions like, where's Tracy at with this project? And help me think about the things that we should be doing next in this project. And it can reference where you're at in the project, and it has all the information about the project.
Okay.
So it can be like a really good tool for you to use as you're kind of leading that project.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. The loop
Yeah.
components are definitely becoming more common. They're kind of that common framework that we see across all the applications, which is pretty cool. What's ironic about it, Tracy, is Loop has actually been out there for quite some time. It just feels like it's getting more steam now with obviously a lot of this AI enablement as well. So that's really cool actually to see that those changes. And then you can copy, you can move things around, and you name it, right? So Joe
and
shows like Kanbans. OneNote
show
on
the Kanban
start,
board.
right?
You gotta have a good Kanban board and a good demo, right?
Right.
Yeah, I love Kanban boards.
Well, this is really cool. I like this.
Yeah. So having the notebooks be able to use the Kanban or the loop components, I think, is a real good benefit for that, for sure. You can also, just a side note about Loop, you can put a Loop component inside a OneNote, and so it's not a replacement for OneNote, nor are notebooks. Like, they each have their own space in the Microsoft ecosystem. They're all good for something, and they all work together.
That's really cool. And if I share this, like the page link with you, obviously, anyone that has it, I could just copy that as an example, and then paste that in chat with you right here. And then it's going to show you, because it's actually technically a loop component. So it actually shows that, and then eventually if you logged into here, Tracy, it would show you in here. And once again, like we're now, there you are, you popped in, right? So once again, it just makes it easier for us to work as a team to tackle different types of things that are then referenced by the AI engine, right? They're referenced inside of the notebook as information inside of here that we can then interact with. So this is just once again, just a really cool tool that shows, once again, the stack concept. This is the power of all these different technologies that we have that really blend that as part of it. So very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to give you a bunch of to-dos now. I'm going to
no.
I'm going to start delegating things to you.
Revoke, right? All right. Well, let's keep going here. We got a couple more minutes because we got to leave a little bit earlier here today, team. Kind of the last ones I wanted to go through is really the bigger announcements that we're starting to see from a Microsoft perspective with these model changes that are occurring. I've got some prompt engineering links that I'm going to post in chat here, team, just so you can access this. This is in addition to the Gear framework, for example, that Tracy had actually posted, the prompt engineering and some best practices too. Really recommend just to check them out and get some of that detail inside of here. It'd be once again, just a really good thing to kind of look at and understand. Either way, I think the bigger thing that I want to talk about, really, if I pull up my my wonderful little web browser here, is this one right here, right? Holy cow, Tracy, did you hear about this by chance?
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
So this was a memorandum of understanding. And it is brief. It is very brief. I don't think I have ever seen this before between business partners when it comes to large language models. It's kind of interesting because, as we know, OpenAI and Microsoft have been very big partners when it comes to large language models, so much so that when GPT-5 launched, we had it the day it was launched, which was a total difference of basically what we've seen with 4.1, 4, and some of the other models. Yeah, I guess, Tracy, I want to start with you because this is unscripted. Like, what were your thoughts when you first heard this? What are you thinking as you're kind of navigating this? What was your feedback?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. I think that, well, I don't know. It's not, it's like a non-binding contract or something. And I don't know. It's, I don't know what to think about it, honestly.
Right, right. Well, let's go.
Yeah.
I'll dive into maybe my
Yeah, you
thoughts with
dive
it,
in
right?
first.
Right. So here's the thing. So OpenAI is a like they've got two divisions that are related to them, right? There's a for-profit and then there's a non-profit perspective with it. I think that's also where a lot of these people talk to like Elon Musk, obviously, fought back quite a bit, right, on basically the for-profit perspective because of what his thoughts were around that. But I have to tell you, this is kind of interesting because what this really signifies to me, I guess, Tracy, is that OpenAI wants to be more of a for-profit company. Like that, that
Yeah.
feels like this is where that memorandum of understanding is kind of going and why it's non-binding, because really, what Microsoft is going to be doing here is that because they are a shareholder, somehow those shares are going to transfer into dollars and value, and I believe that that is probably what this means because I've heard rumors of, for example, and rumors are public sources, so don't think that I've got some in or something like that with Microsoft or with OpenAI. But playing games with share value and things of that nature, like that is something that companies do. And so the question is, well, was that what was being maybe kind of identified here? Because OpenAI does want to compete. They do want to be more of a for-profit model. They do want to start introducing even technologies that compete with Microsoft. Rumors of a LinkedIn competitor, as an example, are also on really the horizon here from an OpenAI perspective. So it was kind of interesting to hear this, and I just want the people and the teams that we interact with just to understand we're already thinking about that. Like we've actually thought about this before. We were thinking like once we started seeing these models come out, like Gemini, like Anthropic's Claude, Sonnet, for example, what happens if somebody has a better model? Like, what do we do, right? Like, what's going to happen in that situation? So I think this is the first sign of being able to be resilient in this space moving forward. More specifically, I think that every person that is developing for AI needs to understand the prompt engineering that we talked through, Tracy, and how important and critical it is. But what they also need to understand is that the models that we know that are classically these very big models that tackle everything, that's no more. I think we're going to start seeing more and more specialized models that might be more focused in legal versus therapy versus business system versus graphics. For example, another major announcement that started to occur a couple days before this understanding was, as you can see here, Microsoft using some of the AI from Anthropic inside of Office 365. So more specifically, what they are seeing is that Claude actually generated better content for PowerPoint slides than even OpenAI's GPT-5 model. So we're starting to see more and more of the companies like Anthropic has always been a model that has created better visualization for a lot of the charts and graphs that people interact with compared to GPT-4 and its image capabilities, or even 5 for that matter. So it's really interesting to see, for example, this. And here's the other thing that gets a little bit more interesting, Tracy. Um, Anthropic's owned by Amazon,
Yeah.
right? So Amazon now, we're integrating more with web services, Amazon Web Services, because what we're noticing as an AI industry is that we don't have enough compute power to be able to keep up with the demand that's happening. Like this is one of those indicators that's like, okay, so is it because we're throwing away billions of dollars? There's some of that, right? There's always, it's never black or white. But what we're seeing is that the adoption with these AI systems is so impactful that lots of companies are signing up for it, and the compute power that's needed for it is not there. And so we need to have other partnerships with other AI providers to be able then to scale the compute needs to create a good user experience Otherwise, we see a lot of the things that we've kind of seen in the architecture was sometimes if you've ever been using it at 7 a.m. Central Time, for example, it's amazing how much slower GPT-4 is at that time compared to then at 9 or 10 a.m. Why is that? Well, it's getting bombarded by business traffic, taking all these metrics and calculating the narratives related to them, right, that are fully automated inside of these systems. So it's a really interesting concept to start seeing kind of mature here as well.
Yeah, and Scott, one thing I was going to say too, Copilot's not going away, right? It's going, like, no matter the large language models that are being used under the hood, we've got that user interface that is Copilot, and Microsoft is investing greatly in that. So as we see all of these things happening, I mean, we can actually even today choose which large language model we use when we develop an agent, for example.
Yep.
So I think that's, rooted in all of this is that integration is really important to know about.
Yeah, and also the prompting, and then finally, once
Yeah.
again, like we're going to start seeing things like this too. Like the other one that I have here now, Visual Studio is preferring Claude over GPT-5 as well. And so, kind of to your point, I guess what I'm trying to get to the core here of is number one, Copilot isn't going away. No, I don't think it's ever going to go away. It's beyond Clippy now. It's not just this little Clippy icon that's moving around, so to speak. It does really do a lot of good things, and it increases efficiency, and even 20% efficiency that turns into really tangible dollars, especially for resource time. But what you're going to see is that it's going to be confusing a little bit because you're going to notice that the large language model on the back end is changing possibly between, for example, OpenAI's model to maybe Anthropic's. And who's to say that Microsoft doesn't have their own model that they've built from a frontier perspective that they introduce as well that drives then some of these other types of functions as well. So just note that, kind of to your point, you got right to the point, Tracy. The investment that Microsoft made, a large language model, is just a small component of that. A large language model, the way they architected it, they wanted the consumption on the hardware. Just quite candidly, the Azure spend is what the large language models are really all about when it comes from a Microsoft position with it. That means then that we got Copilot and all these other additional services that are related to it, but we're going to now start seeing you can have, for example, an Anthropic model on, for example, Azure Foundry or the AI Foundry. You can spin up those types of models as well. So what we're going to start seeing more and more here is that these components are going to become more interchangeable, especially like with MCP and the automation of all around it. I guess here's the core thing I want to stress to anyone that's invested in the Microsoft side of it. The semantic index, the integrations between all the other applications, the loop components, the notebooks, the agents, all of that framework that's been built is agnostic to the large language model. And that is a beautiful thing for you because that means that whoever comes up with the best large language model that we can then harness as part of that will provide better results for your business for automation because it'll be more accurate, it'll have more capability that's ingrained into it, and then from there we're going to see more and more of those use cases that we said were not possible be possible by it, right? So just one thing I want to mention here is that just note that we're going to see this investment change over time, but if you've invested in the Microsoft stack, you're going to be in a really good spot with this because we'll be able to use then those other large language models in the future. Yeah, Tracy, do you have
Yeah.
some?
Well, I was just going to add, when you say that, you talked about the semantic index, you talk about the Microsoft graph, and trusting that, all of your data is not leaving your graph, and that ecosystem, that bubble of safety that you have with the Microsoft ecosystem provides you that, continuity, reliability, safety place for you to keep your data. So I also agree with you that, whatever's happening on the outskirts, having that interface of Copilot in the Microsoft ecosystem is a good place to be.
Right, right.
Mm.
And we'll see here, like in the future, like I said, I think we're going to see different models that are very specific, maybe towards a specific industry or a specific vertical, or maybe they're refined more as well. I just the large language models, the billions and billions of dollars that it costs to train them, I just I don't think that that's something that's going to be really easy. I think it's going to hinder progression, which is why we see like the DeepSeek models and some of those other ones that come out that do just as much but with less. That's the other thing to note here too. Why did OpenAI introduce GPT-5? Well, it does have amazing new capabilities that are added to it. Just as an example, now, instead of having a model context recall rate, I think they call it the MCRC, where like with 4.1, the recall rate when you had like 512,000 characters of text that you brought to it, it could recall accurately about 67% of that text that was brought to it. Now we can basically recall of I think it was 1,500,000 characters. We've got like a 92%, 93% recall rate then on that. And so what I mean by that is these models are getting better and better, but one of the primary reasons for GPT-5, lower power consumption. These models, like it's not just a capability output, it's also the fact that if you need to fire up a nuclear power reactor to make them work, um, that's not very cost effective, right? So we're going to start seeing some of those capabilities and those power decrease requirements that'll increase scale then as well with this. So I just think we're in a really good spot. I love the architecture Microsoft has tackled, and I'm sure there'll be other feedback that we get from team members as well as we go through this journey. But so far it's been a lot of fun. So I guess with
Yeah,
that, Tracy, I got to kind of wrap up here.
perfect.
We've got 2 more weeks. We'll cover another topic here coming up. We'll probably get on our delivery plan as well with the team to go through, for example, BC or F&O and how we deliver those solutions. And yeah, I guess we'll see you from 2 weeks from now. And Tracy, do you have any parting words that you wanna give to the audience here?
No, I love working with you, Scott. And if you have any questions or feedback on these topics, we would love to hear from you. So find us on LinkedIn and we can chat.
Sounds like a plan. Well, everyone, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you 2 weeks from now on the next confab. Have a good one, and
Thanks.
bye.